Exposed, sinister whispers of the haunted night, 10 terrifying walks alone revealed. Lisa Amos stared out of the diner window, the flickering neon sign casting creeping shadows across her tired face. The night air was thick with unease, tinged with a whisper she couldn't quite grasp. As the usual patrons dwindled, the diner felt like the last bastion against the looming threat outside. She heard the stories, of children who vanished after dusk, adrift in the ominous embrace of the forest that swallowed the grounds behind her apartment complex. Hushed rumors floated through the community, but she'd always dismissed them as idle gossip until now. Chills crept down her spine when the clock struck midnight, the hands ticking like a ghostly countdown. Her son, Dylan, was late. The knots in her stomach tightened as she wrapped up her shift, heart racing at the thought of him making his nightly shortcut home. Desperation clawed at her mind, but she brushed it off. He was a smart kid, right? He knew the dangers, or so she thought. She reached for her phone, its screen lighting up with a sudden and unexpected call, an icy hand grasping her heart. Lisa, the voice trembled, barely above a whisper. Dylan never made it home. The room around her seemed to spin, the syrupy darkness of dread pooling at her feet. Her breath quickened, veins coursed with cold terror. Night fell hard, the familiar sounds of laughter and clinking dishes swallowed by the horror of her reality. Desperate, she rushed door to door, knocking on her neighbors' homes, their faces lined with concern but their answers falling flat, heavy like stones. Eyes shifted, murmurs were exchanged. He's probably just playing late, they offered, but their eyes spoke grim truths. Hollow glances, nervous laughter danced on the edge of understanding. Had they heard the whispering too? Had they brushed shoulders with shadows lurking in the trees? Dylan was missing. And the thought of him caught in the vile grip of the woods, the same woods that had consumed others, drove her deeper into a pit of despair. The sun dipped lower, spilling crimson across the horizon as she took a slow, steadying breath. Lisa recalled tales of children lost, disappearing like fleeting shadows beneath the twisted branches. A chill skittered down her spine. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Eyes squinting against the encroaching dark, she tread cautiously toward the looming trees that whispered Dylan's name. Each step felt like plunging deeper into a nightmare. Her heart pounded like a drum, echoing disquiet in the stillness. The woods beckoned, branches scratched her skin like desperate fingers, as if they were alive, breathing. Shadows crept along the ground, swarming her memory with all the ominous warnings she'd brushed aside before. She paused, the weight of every unfriendly gaze from her neighbors stung like icy daggers. Were they all in on it? Were the very faces she trusted now harboring unseen sins? A flicker of movement at the edge of the tree lean snagged her attention, the gnarled branches rustling with malevolent intent. Panic surged like electricity in her veins, igniting a primal instinct to flee. But Lisa knew better, she could not retreat. Not now, not while shadows danced hungrily in the darkness awaiting her. In that moment, she realized she had crossed a line, her unyielding love now colliding with the very horror she dreaded. Questions clawed at her mind, cruel and unyielding, as the silence of the night screamed back. What deep-seated truths lay beyond the veil of familiarity? And would she survive the dreadful whispers that threatened to drown her, pushing her closer to the very heart of the consuming darkness? The darkness closed in around Lisa, breathing heavily in the silence. She took another step toward the tree lean, her stomach twisting tighter with every rustle of leaves. Shadows flitted just beyond her reach, shifting shapes hiding unknown terrors. Dylan. Her voice cracked in the night, barely rising above the growing murmur of wind through the branches. Each echo felt like another heartbeat lost, swallowed whole by the night. She strained her ears for a reply, anything, a laugh, a shout, but the woods only answered with mocking silence. pushing onward, she clung to the edges of sanity, desperate to find any trace of her son. Memories of laughter curdled into anguish, twisted with the idea that she should have been more vigilant. Why hadn't she taken those warnings seriously? A chill skittered over her skin, the forest exhaling ghostly sighs, rich with menace. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught her eye, a flash of white darting between the trees. A stray cat? A trick of her shaken mind? No, it couldn't be. Scrambling forward, she called out again, "Please. If you can hear me, come back. Dylan." The stillness that followed answered in shadows. Panic clawed at her throat, and a bitter taste filled her mouth. She pressed deeper, scrambling over roots and damp earth. Each branch overhead seemed to reach, tantalizingly close, as if the forest itself was funneling her toward some unseen fate. Then, she froze. A sound, low and sorrowful, floated through the air. It was a child's voice whispering her name, soft and luring. "Mom." Her heart leapt only to plunge again into despair. "Dylan," she screamed, voice reverberating through the trees. She felt his presence, just behind the veil of the shadows, yet the fear in her chest rooted her to the ground. But another sound caught her attention, a cacophony of fading footsteps, as if something, or someone was retreating further into the dark. The moment shattered her hesitation and sent her racing. Every step felt heavy with dread, her breaths shallow and quick. "Wait!" She chased the sound, branches snapping underfoot in her frantic pursuit. The next moment, she stumbled into a clearing, a moonlit glen surrounded by towering trees. The air was thick, suffocating with tension. There, in the center, sat Dylan's backpack, a stark reminder of the reality she had dreaded. Fingers trembling, she approached the bag. The darkness around her felt alive, watching, waiting. She knelt, heart racing painfully as she unzipped it. What she found made her blood run cold, a crumpled note with hastily scribbled words, "Don't follow me. They're here." Frozen, terror washed over her in waves. The shadows thickened at the edge of the clearing, now moving closer, flooding the perimeter like a tide of despair. Lisa's instincts screamed to run, a soundless warning thrumming against her skull. She could feel eyes hungry, hidden, fixated on her every move. Then she heard it again, the sound of laughter. Childlike yet distorted, echoing from the depths of the thicket behind her, a melodic taunt. It mocked her, asking questions she couldn't bear to think of. It preyed on her distress, a dark symphony in the heart of despair. "Dylan!" she cried out, voice trembling. Was he lost, surrounded by whatever lurked in the heart of the woods? The laughter morphed into whispers, sinister and taunting. "You'll never find him." Lisa stumbled backward, adrenaline propelling her out of the glen. The pull of fear was stronger than logic. She had to escape before whatever lay beyond ensnared her too. The whispers followed, encircling her thoughts with darkness, pulsing against her eardrums, but in that moment of terror, a flicker of hope sparked as a thought penetrated through the fog of fear. Could she feel Dylan's presence somehow? With a newfound resolve, she spun toward the thicket once more, ready to face the terrors that awaited, and plunge deeper into the darkness of the woods. The haunting stillness felt closing, a portal shifting toward a chilling truth. Was Dylan waiting just a breath away, or was the forest merely playing its final game, one that would ensnare her heart forever? Lisa pushed through the thicket, branches clawing at her skin like insistent fingers. The laughter faded, but its echo lingered, crawling under her skin, a reminder of the unseen horrors that lurked just out of sight. She had to keep moving. The thought of not finding Dylan consumed her, gnawing at her insides like a ravenous beast. "Mom," the whisper returned, a breathy sound that danced around her, urging her forward. Was it a trap? Or a lifeline? The air thickened, oppressive with unease, and the trees loomed higher, their gnarled limbs stretching out as if attempting to ensnare her. Each footfall sent a sharp crack through the night, and each sound felt like a warning. Each rustle of the leaves seemed to echo her fear. She could feel the weight of unseen eyes trailing her, waiting, watching. "Dylan!" She called out again, voice trembling as it split the silence, only to be swallowed whole. A darkening cloud cloaked the moon, and shadows warped around her. She stumbled deeper into the gloom, guided only by that whisper and the panic clawing at her throat, and then, she saw a glimpse of white through the trees. Hope flickered within her, fierce but fragile. "Dylan!" she shouted, sprinting toward it. She ignored the prickling sensation crawling down her spine, indulging only in the relentless drive to reach the source. As she drew closer, the small figure materialized. It was unmistakably him, standing silently among the trees. Relief swept through her even as confusion set in. "Dylan." He didn't move. The boy was eerily still, just beyond the clearing, his back turned to her. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears as she approached. She took a few cautious steps, her gut churning with suspicion. "Please, say something." But the silence blanketed them both, thick as a fog. Unable to resist, she reached out, touching his shoulder. It felt cold, unnaturally so. Panic swelled as he slowly turned, face void of expression, eyes wide and empty like hollow sockets staring into nothingness. "Dylan." She gasped, stepping back, heart crashing against her ribs. This wasn't he, her son. The figure twisted, merging with the shadows seamlessly. Lisa's breath froze in her throat as it dissolved into the dark, replaced by chattering whispers that cascaded through the trees, laughter morphing into a sinister symphony that bore down upon her. "We're here, we're waiting," the voices taunted, echoing her fears. Fighting the urge to flee, she steadied herself. She could not let fear consume her. "Leave him alone," she screamed into the darkness. The laughter spiraled around her, slashing through her bravado. Something moved, flitting at the periphery of her vision among the trees. Was it Dylan? Vague forms danced and flickered, teasing her resolve. "Mom, help me!" the sound echoed from all around, disorienting her layered with falsehoods. In a moment of panic, she stumbled back, colliding with a tree. The bark scraped her skin, and she gasped in pain, but all she could focus on now was the notion of getting out of here, that she was caught in a nightmare with no escape. Standing, she turned to run, but the shadows tightened around her. Branches reached out like skeletal hands, closing in, as if the forest decided to keep her, nay, consume her. She fought against the entangling vines, feeling the cold breath of night whisper tantalizing secrets she didn't want to hear. "You can't leave, he belongs to us now." Lisa's heart raced, panic now turning to desperation. She had to find him. Somehow, she had to break this sinister hold. She forced her feet to move, her body screaming in protest as she pushed through the choking darkness. The night seemed to close in tighter, and the woods pulsed with life, a sinister desire that chilled her bones. If this was a nightmare, she needed to wake up. But was it too late? Ahead, a dim light flickered through the trees, a beacon in this suffocating darkness. What awaited her beyond that light? Was it salvation or an even greater peril than what haunted her now? Fingers trembling, she braced herself, one foot forward, plunging into the unknown. What lay ahead could be the end of her or the beginning of a hell she never expected. With the flicker growing brighter, she could only hope she was chasing a way out, or perhaps, further into despair. The light wrapped around her, a fragile warmth piercing the chilled air. She paused for a moment, allowing herself to breathe. But the whispers followed, curling around her, dark tendrils of discontent clawing at her sanity. "You should not be here, you should not have come," it echoed in her ears, teasing her, driving her forward with resolve. She stepped into the clearing, the brightness culminating in a flickering flame from an ancient-looking lantern. It stood tall on a stone pedestal, but its light felt wrong, hazy, fluctuating, creating long shadows that leaped at her with life of their own. The air was thicker here, charged with a palpable energy that made her skin prickle. Her instincts screamed at her to retreat, yet she was drawn to it. "Dylan!" she cried, the desperation in her voice almost tearing at her throat. She scanned the area, searching for some sign of her son, adrenaline still coursing through her veins. The laughter from before seemed diluted, but its remnants echoed around her. Suddenly, she spotted movement in the distance, a blur darting behind a thicket. Was it him? Her heart raced as she rushed toward it, but all she found was a rusted swing hanging lifelessly from a gnarled tree, swinging in an unseen breeze. Its creaking sounded like whispers, taunting her with memories of simpler, happier times. Then it hit her. The night was changing. The trees shifted, and the ground beneath her seemed to pulse, throbbing with an unseen heartbeat. She staggered back, disoriented, gripping the lantern tightly as the light flickered ominously. It was like a pulse itself, resonating with her fears. "Help me, Mom." The voice was distant but unmistakable. Dylan was out there, somewhere entangled in this nightmare. "Stop playing games," she shouted. "Show yourself." Suddenly, the lantern flickered violently. Shadows twisted unnaturally in response as a creeping dread washed over her. The laughter erupted again, infectious but mocking, rising around her like a swell of dark water threatening to pull her under. Then, from the corner of her eye, she saw something small darting from behind the tree line. Her instincts screamed to run, but the mother's heart pulled her closer, tugging her against her better judgment. "Dylan!" She called again, this time soft, almost pleading. The shadow shifted again and she felt a rush of icy wind sweep through the clearing. It wasn't just a shadow now, it was a figure. A small form, hunched and moving against the glow of the lantern. She narrowed her eyes, trying to discern the sight. Was it really her son or another figment of this twisted nightmare? "Come here," she begged, fear morphing into aggression. She forced the words through her clenched teeth, fighting the madness threatening to invade her mind. The figure paused, then turned, revealing a face obscured by darkness. It wasn't Dylan, and yet, something about it felt horrifically familiar, almost like a reflection twisted in a cracked mirror. The laughter erupted anew, and the figures around her appeared, emerging from the shadows they once occupied, circling like predators. "Leave him alone," she screamed, the words tearing from her throat. But the figures only laughed, their eyes void of empathy, and she realized the truth: they weren't here for her son. They had come for her. "No, no!" she cried, backing away, but a dozen hands reached for her, pulling her into their churning reality. The laughter crescendoed, overlapping like a sinister tidal wave, drowning her pleas. With one desperate swing of the lantern, she swung it against the darkness, the light shining fiercely as she screamed, "Get away!" For a brief moment, the glow pushed back the shadows, making space. But it was fleeting. The shadows recoiled, then surged once more, a black tide swallowing her hope whole. As Lisa stumbled, the whispers filled the air again with a bone-chilling suggestion. "You will join us." Dread welled up inside her. She hadn't just stumbled into a nightmare, she was about to become a part of it. "Mom!" The call sliced through the chaos, the pure anguish wrapping around her heart like a vice. Was it real? Or just another trick? Torn between two worlds, she stood on the precipice of terror, knowing she had to choose. Time was slipping away, shadows were circling, and above it all again, the whispers rose. Make a choice. What choice? What hell awaited behind the visage of hope? The lantern dimmed, and with it, her chance to turn back. But before she could decide, Dylan's voice cut through again, echoing with desperation. Once more she spoke, "I'm coming." But was it too late for both mother and son? In the darkness, a new shape emerged. The question hung heavy in the air, sharp and forbidding: was it a way out, or another trap? The tension crackled as she turned to face the dark. What was lurking just beyond the flickering light? What fresh horror awaited? The shadows pressed in tighter, chilling the air around her. Lisa felt as if the darkness could taste her fear, their whispers now a cacophony of twisted breath and malignant glee. She fought to steady her heartbeat, but it thudded wildly, drowning out the sinister sounds. The flickering light of the lantern drew ever closer to extinction, the flame swallowing itself in trembling desperation. Dylan's voice, so close yet still a distant echo, surged through the fear like an electric shock. "Mom!" It twisted her gut, the plea laced with urgency and despair. But with every desperate step, the laughter grew, an unnerving symphony that wrapped around her, gripping her like a vice. "Please, please," she pleaded, her voice barely more than a whisper, desperately searching the darkness. She couldn't let it swallow her whole. The shadows moved in a grotesque dance, twisting and contorting, and for a moment, she thought she saw glimpses of familiar faces, neighbors, friends, people she'd known, all twisted into masks of despair and joy, reveling in her torment. She gritted her teeth, holding the lantern aloft. "I will find you, Dylan." But the answer was silence, stretching like an eternal chasm. The air thickened around her, every breath became heavier, every moment a weight she felt she might not lift again. Then the darkness exploded. A shrill scream tore through, echoing her own thoughts. A figure lunged toward her, feral and wild, its eyes hollow pits of black. She stumbled backward, the lantern flickering dangerously, the light revealing a face that twisted her stomach, a hazy reflection of herself, ripped from her nightmares. "Join us, Lisa," it hissed, reaching out with unnaturally long fingers, beckoning her to step closer into the void. "No," she gasped, spinning to escape, her heart racing with survival instinct. But the whispers grew louder. "Surrender, surrender, it's useless." The figures around her laughed, swirling, their hands beckoning like a tide pulling her to a watery grave. She reeled, feeling the pressure of their intent, a suffocating embrace that made her blood run cold. Then she remembered the lantern, the last flicker of hope. With ferocity ignited by a mother's instinct, she swung it in their direction. "Get back!" she shrieked, knowing this was her only weapon against the abyss closing in. The light burst forth, momentarily illuminating the faces, their laughter transforming into horrifying wails, pain laced in their pitch. Seizing the moment, she turned to run, her feet pounding against the soft ground, pushing past the trees that seemed to reach for her in longing. In the chaos of flight, she heard Dylan again, a faint cry, this time drifting like a wounded feather. "Mom, I'm scared. Stay with me. I'm coming." She screamed, her resolve hardening. She crashed through the thicket, branches slashing against her skin, but she couldn't stop. Blind terror spurred her on, propelling her deeper into a realm of shadow and insanity. Emerging onto a narrow path, she spotted two glowing eyes in the undergrowth, the embodiment of terror in the dark. They weren't human, they were twisted, malevolent. Paralyzed, her breath hitched in her throat as the eyes blinked slowly, their gaze raking over her with hunger. In that moment, she understood. Whatever this nightmare was, it thrived on her fear, feeding upon every flicker of doubt, every ounce of despair. "Dylan!" she cried out again, louder this time, desperation fueling her voice. And then everything went still. The laughter faded, the whispers muted, leaving only the sounds of her heavy breathing. The lantern's light dimmed again, barely illuminating her feet on the dark path. What became of those who lost hope? The creatures surrounding still lurked, watching with unfathomable interest. The shadows felt like they were breathing with her, watching, waiting. But with focus sharpening, she pushed her fear to the back of her mind. "Where are you?" Just as she steadied herself, a rustle came from beside her. Instinctively, she turned, clutching the lantern tighter. Against the dim glow, she saw a figure emerging, small, lost, a mere silhouette. It was Dylan. A sudden rush of hope surged through her, crashing like a wave against the anxiety. But as she stepped forward to embrace him, the shadow morphed around him, pulling back into the darkness. Was it truly him? A sinister laugh erupted, vibrating through the trees, echoing off each trunk. "Choose again, Mom," the voice taunted, twisting between familiar and unfamiliar. Staring into the void, Lisa realized her nightmare was only just beginning. What awaited her in that moment of choice? Which Dylan would she find, and could she save him from the darkness that hungered for them both? Lisa's heart raced as she faced the shadows, desperately trying to pierce through the double-edged darkness that surrounded her. Was that really her son? Her gut twisted with doubt as the mocking laughter echoed, drowning any hope she clung to. The lantern flickered weakly, every heartbeat feeling like a countdown. "Dylan!" She shouted again, her voice strained with desperation. "Is that really you?" Each whisper from the dark seemed to wrap around her throat like a noose, tightening with every echoed syllable. There was something hauntingly wrong with the way the shadows moved, twisting around the silhouette, making it barely discernible from the darkness itself. The air crackled with anticipation, prickling her skin. She took a faltering step forward, the beam from the lantern cutting through the suffocating gloom. The figure flinched, as if cowering from its own reflection. And that flinch sent a fresh wave of panic racing through Lisa's veins. Deep down, she wondered if something else held dominion over her child, something dark that had seeped into him, was stealing his form. "Mom! Help me!" The voice cried out, sending stabs of fury and fear deep into her chest. It sounded like Dylan but stripped of innocence, coated in ice and despair. "Stay right there!" she shouted, willing her feet to move despite the weight of uncertainty. The shadows shifted as the figure recoiled, the twinkle of its eyes glimmering through the thick curtain of night. The laughter rose again, a mad, twisting spiral of glee, mingling with the whispers as they slithered through the branches like serpents in the dark. What if she was wrong? A wave of guilt coursed through her. If she chose wrong, if this was a trick, choose. The voice of the darkness hissed, taunting, pulling at her resolve. Your son or your sanity? The light or the abyss? In that moment, she felt a compulsion to step back, to shield herself from what was being offered. Something clawed inside her, a primal instinct that screamed to protect her heart at all costs. "Dylan!" she called again, strained and high, the lantern flickering furiously. "I'm coming. Hold on." She pushed forward, fighting the grip of the shadows that stretched like skeletal fingers, pulling her into an abyss of despair. Suddenly, the silhouette lunged forward, the lantern's glow catching the face. It wasn't Dylan. The features were twisted, eyes too wide, filled with an otherworldly darkness that poured out venomous words. "You will pay for your choices, mother." It sneered, and each word clawed at the remnants of her heart. "No. You're lying." Lisa shrieked, recoiling, seeking the light with frantic determination. She swung the lantern around as if it could fend off the dread, the despair that wrapped around her like a second skin. "Very well," the dark figure purred, its form shifting, blending again into the shadows. "If you truly wish to find him, the path separates. Will you sacrifice the light to embrace the darkness? Or cling to your flickering hope?" Around her, the shadows pooled, thickening, preparing to swallow her whole. Without thinking, Lisa turned and ran, each step echoing her resolve. The darkness surged behind her, relentless, the laughter morphing into howls. The lantern's light flickered from hope to uncertainty, shadows clawing at her heels. "Dylan!" she cried, a primal war scream more than a call for her son. That name, her beacon in the chaos, had become a haunting refrain that could either save or consume her. The laughter changed pitch, like a knife gliding over glass, sharp and painful. What choice lay ahead? Which path would reveal her son, and what horrors would she have to confront to rescue him from the void? As she stumbled down the entwined paths of despair and hope, the darkness opened up before her, revealing two choices bereft of light. There, a fork awaited, one shadowy path trailing back into malevolent unknowns, the other shrouded in an oppressive gloom that hummed with distorted whispers. The suffocating silence that followed made the hairs on her arms stand on edge. In that brief calm, she realized something more sinister than she understood was at play. Which choice would crack her heart open, and would it be enough to save what she loved? Lisa halted at the fork, breathless, her mind spiraling through moments that haunted her. The shadows whispered around her, curling like smoke, trying to lure her into their embrace. Each option loomed in the darkness, heavy with secrets she feared to uncover. "Dylan!" she shouted again, desperation flooding her lungs. The name felt weighty on her tongue, as if summoning something unimaginable. The air shifted, charged and daunting. She could feel it coiling around her, a predator sizing up its prey. That in an instant, the atmosphere changed, a low growl rumbled through the blackness. Fear rippled down her spine. With her heart hammering, she forced herself to move, stepping cautiously toward the path on the right, the one that pulsed with a disquieting rhythm. It felt alive, beckoning her further with the promise of salvation or horror. As she ventured deeper, the shadows thickened, nearly solidifying. The lantern's flicker struggled against the gathering gloom. It was almost as if they were aware of her choice, angry at her defiance. Whispers grew louder, overlapping like a cacophony of madness, each voice taunting her. "You think you can save him?" A whisper slithered past her ear, chilling her blood. "You've already lost. Shut up." She snapped, swinging the lantern wildly as though its meager light could push back the truth. The figures swayed just out of view, shadows cloaked in the atmosphere of despair. A shrill laugh erupted, echoing down the corridor. "Choose again, mother." It was the darkness, mockery dripping from its words. She could almost see the sneer lurking within. "Leave your child to suffer alone, or follow into this world of nightmares." The mention of nightmares struck her hard. Suddenly, images of Dylan morphed into her mind, his laughter, bright and innocent, twisted into cries and desperate pleas. Every thought cut deeper, like knives slashing through hope as Lisa dared to move forward in this malignant maze. Each step felt heavy, dragging her under the weight of indecision. The shadows wove around her ankles, trying to pull her back, but she pushed forward with a raw determination that battled against the creeping dread. "Mom! Please!" Dylan's voice rang out again, echoing with a heart-wrenching urgency. She faltered, adrenaline coursing through her veins, fighting against the urge to turn back. "I'm coming." Her voice cracked. Without realizing it, she had moved deeper, drawn toward the darkness that promised either madness or salvation. Time seemed to stretch infinitely, and as she turned the corner, the path opened into a wide, cavernous clearing. The air thick with anticipation, the shadows jostled about her, shifting as if hosting an unseen audience. Lisa stood at the center, the lantern's light barely keeping the darkness at bay, and there it was caught within the web of shadows, a glimpse of something that should not exist. A flicker of movement edged into view. It was a swirling shape, a formless dread that coalesced into a figure. "Dylan," she breathed. The shape wavered, morphing into something alarming yet eerily familiar. The laughter grew louder, twisted echoes of what once was. "Return to the light or embrace the void." It taunted, the voice like her son's but warped, drenched in malice. Her skin crawled. Her stomach churned. Was this the price of her choices? The very embodiment of all her fears danced in front of her, teasing, threatening. "Wake up, Lisa," it sneered, "the real game is just beginning." With a jolt, Lisa knew she was at a crossroads again, this time, one she might not walk away from. As the shadows surged forward, ready to swallow her whole, the desperate plea echoed in her heart. What had she awoken from the depths? And could she face the truth lurking, waiting in the heart of this darkness? The lantern sputtered, flickering once more, drawing Lisa's gaze to the dulled light that promised deliverance. But what slumber until dawn awaited her beyond this shadowy brink? What would she truly have to confront to finally save her son? The shadows quivered, pulling back just a fraction as if contemplating their next move. Lisa's breath caught in her throat. She was standing in a living nightmare, faced with a terrible choice that tasted bitter on her tongue. That flickering light her only lifeline, just a fragile barrier against the encroaching darkness. "Dylan!" She cried out again, her voice cracking under the strain of panic. The figure before her wavered, its shape sometimes resembling her son, sometimes morphing into something grotesque and monstrous, a twisted reflection of the love she held for him. The laughter echoed, a mocking symphony that cut deeper than any blade. "Choose the light or lose him forever." The voice resonated, a vivid reminder of her despair. As if in response, shadows slithered closer, curling around her legs like serpents. She felt a powerful urge to retreat, to flee back to the corridor where certainty might still linger. But Dylan's voice pierced through the clamor of fear, desperate and pleading. "Mom! Panic surged through her, ripping through her indecision. She could not abandon him, not when every cry of agony sounded like a dagger to her heart. "I'm coming!" she shouted, though the words felt hollow against the looming dread. Summoning a force she didn't know she had, she plunged deeper into the darkness, toward the shifting mass that flickered and writhed before her. The lantern sputtered again, a stuttering heartbeat that fought against the clamoring shadows. With each step, a weight pressed against her chest, a thick fog of fear wrapping its tendrils around her. Her legs trembled, urging her to turn back. But then, amidst the encroaching chaos, something caught her eye, a faint glimmer not far from where the ghastly figure danced. Hope sparked briefly, igniting a flicker of determination within her. She glanced back, weighing her options. "Dylan!" she shouted again, more firmly this time. The shadows hissed, a cacophony of resentment echoing back. "No more, Lisa!" The shape snarled, distorting as it reached for her, fingers like elongated claws stretching into the lantern's light. "This is your last chance." Every drop of courage she had surged up within her as she took another step forward. The figure twisted, its laughter infused with hatred, and the shadows roared, their anger tangible in the air, darkening the world around her. "You think you can challenge the darkness? You seek salvation in a world that thrives on despair." A sudden rush of air whooshed past her, and the lantern flickered violently, threatening to extinguish. In that heartbeat, the faint glimmer she'd seen was gone, replaced by an overwhelming onslaught of darkness. Her heart pounded furiously, each beat a desperate plea for survival. "Mom! Please!" The sound now burst forth, intertwined with screams. It was layered with terror and urgency, a horrifying juxtaposition to the grotesque mockery that surrounded her. With every ounce of strength left, she thrust the lantern forward, illuminating part of the darkness. The shadows recoiled for a moment, revealing twisted figures trapped within, faces frozen in agony and despair. They clawed at her with silent screams, echoes of lost souls begging for liberation. "Run, Lisa!" one of them mouthed silently. What had she stumbled into? How deep did this nightmare plunge? The weight of countless eyes bore down on her. Each soul met her gaze with a haunting familiarity, each looked like someone she had lost, someone she remembered. With chilling realization, she understood. It was a trap, designed to sow more fear, to tear apart her will. And still, she could not turn away from Dylan. He wasn't just a voice anymore, he was the fabric of her very existence. The shadows surged again, and Lisa felt the darkness clawing at her mind, a cacophony of whispers demanding she give in. But fueled by a fierce maternal drive, she tightened her grip around the lantern and pressed forward. Dylan's cries guided her through the chaos, the flickering light her only hope against the onslaught. Then, in that heartbeat of desperation, the figure locked eyes with her, the hatred crackling in the air. "They will all suffer, unless you surrender." Lisa's heart raced. What lay ahead was still shrouded in unfathomable terror. Would she discover the truth behind the veil of shadows, and at what cost? The figure lunged for her, darkness enveloping her once more. In that terrifying instant, everything became a blur, pounding on her psyche. As the shrieks crescendoed, and the lantern flickered wildly, questions surged in Lisa's mind. What was the true price of love? And would she lose herself in the attempt to save her son? The dark abyss opened wide, ready to consume her, but a voice broke through, carrying a chilling clarity. "Welcome home, Lisa." The darkness pressed down on Lisa, wrapping around her like cold, damp cloth. The flickering lantern felt frilier than ever, a heartbeat waning under the weight of despair. She instinctively clutched it tighter, staring into the swirling shadows that now closed in, whispering secrets that clawed at the edges of her sanity. Panic coursed through her veins, drowning her thoughts. "Dylan!" she shouted again, her voice cracked and desperate in the suffocating air. She could hear him, just beyond the veil of darkness, a real voice mingling with the tormenting echoes surrounding her. But every moment spent hesitating felt like seconds wasted, time she could not afford. "Not your child," the distorted figure sneered, its voice a chilling echo. Surrender and find peace, you know his fate. The shadows rippled, and Lisa felt them brush against her skin, icy fingers of doubt and regret. She staggered back, her breaths quickening, each exhalation dragging in despair. Paralyzed by fear, thoughts clashed in a whirlwind. Was Dylan truly lost? "Mom, it hurts." The plea slashed through the tension like a blade, sharp and piercing. The shadows swelled, feeding off her uncertainty, growing stronger, more insistent. Still, she pressed forward, driven by an instinct as primal as survival. Light flickered again, a defiance she clung to, illuminating the contours of anguished faces, all watching her, silently screaming for salvation. "Stop this!" she screamed, voice trembling. "You don't own him. You don't own me." The figure laughed, a cruel, hollow sound that echoed through the dark. "What are you without your son? A husk. A ghost. Will you fight for a memory?" With each word, Lisa felt herself unraveling, but the weight of a world without Dylan catalyzed her fury. The lantern's light, though weak, pushed back against the encroaching shadows, momentarily revealing the twisted images of lost souls. Lisa Dylan's voice broke through again. It was closer now, tinged with fear and desperation. She could almost touch him, a slant of golden warmth in the oppressive gloom. As if fueled by the desperate hope of reaching him, she lunged forward, letting out a scream that echoed against the hollow emptiness. The shadows recoiled, wailing in anger for daring to breach their domain. In the sudden silence that followed, Lisa felt the atmosphere shift. The figure loomed, unsettled, as darkness wavered, revealing a glimpse of the corridor beyond their home. A straight path lay at the end, beckoning her forward, but it was shuttered with fear. "Do not trust the light, it's a trick, Lisa," it urged, its voice now laced with desperation, an almost pleading tone as if the entity was aware of losing her resolve. "Mom, please. I can't see." Dylan's voice rang louder, slicing through the malignant laughter. The choice was clear now, the flickering lantern danced between hope and despair. She was a thread caught in a web spun of shadow and whispers. The figure lunged again, desperation casting away its earlier confidence. "This is your last chance." For an agonizing heartbeat, Lisa hesitated. Would she be drawn back into the familiar warmth of the living world? Or was every step forward a descent into a deeper abyss? Then she felt it, a shift in the air, a cool breeze washing over her like a whisper of clarity. The lantern pulsed one last time, illuminating the corridor and revealing fleeting fragments of her life shared with Dylan, laughter, hugs, and secrets exchanged. Was this what she fought for? "Mom!" Dylan's voice surged, filled with urgency. He was here, caught in the fear of the shadows extending from the ruin of their home. With renewed resolve, Lisa forged ahead, yelling, "I choose him." The shadows writhed violently, their screeches mingling with the whispers of the trapped souls. But the dark clawed back, thin fingers of smoke grasping at her ankles with furious intent, dragging her toward the void as the lantern dimmed. "Welcome home." The figure's laughter reverberated as it vanished into the thickening shadows. Just before the darkness consumed her completely, she caught a glimpse of Dylan, his small figure flickering like a candle fighting against the wind. In the chaos, everything spiraled down into an endless night where hope hung by a thread. Would she brave the abyss to pull him back, or would she remain a prisoner of shadows forever? Lisa's heart raced like wildfire as the shadows clawed at her, desperate to drag her back into their suffocating embrace. But just as despair threatened to swallow her whole, something deep within her blazed to life, a fierce, unquenchable mother's love. "I choose him," she screamed, voice reverberating across the clearing. With every ounce of strength, she thrust the lantern forward, illuminating the spiraling darkness around her. The light exploded forth in a dazzling burst, sending the shadows recoiling like insects scurrying from a flame. A chorus of anguished cries filled the air as the shadowy figures writhed away from the light. Was it too late for her boy? Her pulse thundered in her ears, the glowing orb illuminating twisted faces, eyes filled with fearsome longing. "I'm here, Dylan," she barked, pushing through the dread that threatened to hold her back. Just hold on. The darkness rumbled in fury. No. It hissed, you cannot take him. He is ours. But Lisa squeezed her eyes shut, focusing on the voice that echoed in her mind. Mom. Help me. It was Dylan, and in that moment, everything else faded away, the cold, the shadows, the sinister whispers. It was just her love, brighter than any darkness, swirling inside her, with determination igniting her spirit. She pressed onward, every step ignited by the need to save her son. The lantern shone fiercely, casting long beams over the fractured world around her as she called out again, Dylan. I'm coming. Suddenly, the shadows pulsed angrily, clawing at the edges of her sanity. The ground shook beneath her feet, transforming into a treacherous landscape of despair. She teetered but held her ground, arms extended, lantern shining bright in the engulfing void, and then there he was. A flicker of white through the dark, her son, his little body trapped between the fabric of shadow and reality. Mom! Dylan sobbed, pulling at her heartstrings. With a burst of adrenaline, elation surged within her, propelling her forward. Hold on. She urged, unwavering as the shadows billowed around them. Instinctively, she felt a connection pulling them together, a strand of love weaving through the darkness. The lantern's glow intensified, wrapping around her son, cutting through the blackness to reveal his terrified face. His eyes held a mix of fear and vulnerability. Please, Mommy, don't leave me. Lisa's eyes brimmed with determination. With one swift motion, she closed the distance, lunging for him, wrapping her arms around his small frame, pulling him toward the safety of the light. Never. I won't let go. She vowed, breath hot in the night air. The figure of darkness howled in agony, lunging forward, arms outstretched, trying to reclaim what was never theirs. The whispers crescendoed, wrapping Lisa in a cacophony of despair. You'll regret this, Mother. You cannot escape. But as she held Dylan close, their connection blazed stronger than any darkness, igniting a light that pressed back against the shadows. Together. She shouted, grounding her resolve. We can do this together. With newfound strength, they sprinted toward the light, their only path to survival. The lantern pulsed with fierce energy, flooding the gloom behind them with radiant warmth. Shadows stretched and twisted, snapping at their heels, but the love in Lisa's heart shielded them, a fortress against the consuming void. The darkness screamed, the air thick with the weight of its fury, but Lisa didn't look back. She could feel the warmth of salvation drawing her and Dylan nearer. In a burst of blinding light, they broke through the boundary that had held them for so long. The echoes of laughter faded into the night, replaced by the tender silence before dawn. They collapsed on the forest floor, panting, surrounded by towering trees bathed in the soft glow of dawn. The haunting whispers evaporated like a forgotten nightmare. They were free. Mom, Dylan whimpered, trembling against her. She could feel his heart beating against her own. I've got you, Lisa whispered through her own tears, cradling him close, savoring the warmth of his small body. Against her OWN.AS dawn broke, the dismal forest transformed, vibrant colors blooming around them, signaling the end of their harrowing journey. The darkness that had once twisted the trees and coiled around their hearts was dispelled by the light, and in that moment, the early rays of sun felt like rebirth. Days turned into weeks, and though the memory of that terrifying night lingered, a quiet strength reharmonized their lives. Lisa watched Dylan laugh, play, and explore, growing a little braver each day, each smile a pact. Her heart swelled with gratitude. Theirs was a bond unbroken, forged in the fires of fear and triumph. They walked home, hand in hand, knowing that the darkness may always lurk in the corners, but together, they would face whatever came. And as they rounded the last corner, passing the familiar diner where this all began, Lisa could feel the warmth of a brighter future embracing them. Never again, right? Dylan looked up at her with wide, innocent eyes. Never again, Lisa promised. This was just the beginning of their lives, intertwined in newfound courage. You need to subscribe now to ensure you don't miss our next exclusive stories. Smash that like button to show your support. It boosts our chances to keep bringing you thrilling tales. Flood the comments section with your feelings and theories about this spine-chilling conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this journey. Your support truly matters.